So have you ever asked yourself, what are the dangers of giving up on your spiritual path? And what happens if you don't actually stay true to yourself? You know, I'm going to open up this video with a quote by John D. Martini, who said, "I'd rather the whole world be against me than my own soul." This saying has stuck with me, man, because it rings so true, or at least it resonates with myself. And I think we've all seen an example of someone who kind of goes off their path a bit because they actively rejected what their conscience was telling them. And then they went another direction and went on a whole crazy journey. You know, their soul was tormented inside, ripping them apart. They're going through an existential crisis. Everything's falling apart. And then, boom, they have to go right back where they started from. I can definitely relate to this. I'm sure some of you can. But, you know, before we expand on this topic, and I don't want to even just talk about what are the dangers and trying to do a scare tactic, but basically I want to emphasize the importance of staying true to yourself. But before we do that, we got to go through some definitions, man, because people get confused all the time and we get mixed up, right? And meanings of words change over time. Sometimes it's justifiable. Sometimes it's out of idiocy, like the word literally. Remember when it used to actually mean something? And now it's just people used it in the wrong context so many times that it's now officially like, oh yeah, whatever. Literally can just mean whatever it wants. And to give you an example of this, I'm going to search the meaning of spirituality. The quality of being concerned with the human spirit or soul, as opposed to material or physical things. There we go. Now, before we expand on this, I also searched up the etymology, so the original word of spirituality, spiritus, which means breath of life. It means to breathe, to be. So I just kind of find it funny how over time, people's perception of spirituality, it's like, oh no, it's like you have to put all your effort and importance on the immaterial as opposed to the physical, you know what I mean? So there's a kind of derogatory, kind of sweeping under the rug, kind of, it's not as important as this. Whereas back in the day, spirituality was just a mode of being. It was just being human. So I just find it funny that now we have like a spiritual identity. And I'm guilty of this too. Now, I've talked on this channel before about the dangers of over-prioritizing the spiritual and completely denying the physical. Because I don't know, I don't really buy into the dogma that the world is just an illusion, right? That duality isn't real, evil doesn't exist, and everything is just a projection of your mind. We're living in this collective fantasy. Well, actually, we are living in collective fantasy, but I don't mean that in the extreme sense of the word. Even though there's clearly a top-down hierarchy when it comes to creation, in terms of, literally every object in this room started off as an immaterial thought that didn't exist, right? And thoughts you can't really prove. I can't put it under a microscope and show, yep, see, it's made out of atoms, just like everything else. That's why it's kind of, I don't know, it's strange, because I understand that there's a top-down hierarchy in a sense, in terms of how creation works. At least, you know, I can only speak from the human plane right now. And if you think about every object in this room, outside of my organic human skin, everything was created by a human mind. It started off as this immaterial thought, which we use our attention, which means to mentally reach out. And then we bring it into existence using our craftsmanship and intelligence and, you know, whatnot. And you can think of the spiritual almost as the blueprint and the physical as the actual building itself. However, to put all the importance on one and be lopsided and then to completely deny the other, it's kind of dangerous, because when you have a blueprint without the execution, then it's just plans. It's just an idea. It's not even real. It's not real until it comes into this existence. I was reading this book. It's called The Language of Creation, all about symbolism, about this stuff, the spiritual and the physical meaning and physical reality, and kind of reconciling these paradigms. So spiritual reality informs corporeal reality with meaning and purpose. Matter expresses spirit by making it visible and tangible in the universe. So in other words, we've got the immaterial, which informs, like it sends all the messages down to earth, but without us bringing it up and manifesting it, then that's all it is. It's just an idea. So the reason why I'm saying all this is because I just want to convey how important it is to reconcile these two. I don't know, I just feel like we live in such a dialectic world and of polarization, and we just kind of get too extreme with things. And it's kind of ironic how in the spiritual community, you've got like this micro niche people of non-dualists, yet everything that they're saying is speaking from a dualistic paradigm. You know what I mean? To truly be non-dual, you have to transcend dialectics and to put importance over one end of the pole over the other. That's actually being dualistic, right? And sometimes it's okay to be dualistic. Sometimes we need to choose a side. Sometimes we have to put our priorities and say, right now, this is more important. I'm going to shove this out of the way. So I understand that. But I just think that when we deny physical reality, especially when we make that our life goal, I just don't see that. And I just don't think it's realistic. That's all. So the reason why I'm bringing all this up is not just to make this video about like philosophy and metaphysics, but it's just to convey the importance of reconciling, especially the physical and the spiritual. Because if you have an inner conflict in your mind about these two, whether you're a materialist and all you do is put your focus on physical creations and definitions, and you can't like transcend categories, or if you go completely spiritual and you go real extreme and then you completely deny all the physical, well, both are going to present a lot of problems, right? Different sets of problems, but problems nonetheless. When I think it's good to honor where you're at and what this is. And I can understand, listen, there's a lot of suffering, darkness, and, we could talk about it all day, about the messed up aspects of this world, of humanity, how dark things have gotten. And so I can understand that emotionally we're going to have these defense mechanisms. And if there's a belief system that we can adopt that allows us to, it's none of it's real, it's just a nightmare, some of us are going to take it. When you truly accept deep in your heart that all of this is real, things get a bit more intense, However, we can't ignore the spiritual aspect of reality, something that kind of transcends all of this. And we've had deep intuition since the Old Testament, I feel, even beyond that we are made for something else. You know what I mean? Because why? I don't know. I try to think, like, why else would we have this urge for immortality, to live forever? Like, if we were just purely just animals living on this earth, why are humans so concerned with the afterlife and legacy and meaning and spirituality and God and all this kind of stuff? Like, where is that coming from and why? I don't know if I can answer this question right now, but it's an interesting question to ask. Because when I look at my cat, Felix, or my dog, Barbie, I just don't see them ever worrying about what's going to happen when I die. I should do more with my life. You know what I mean? Like, I've never seen an animal be concerned with existential concerns. It seems to be a exclusive human problem, at least what we can see. And that raises important questions, because it kind of tells me that desire has to come from somewhere. And a desire can't exist, at least from what I've perceived in this reality, unless you guys can think of an example and prove me wrong. Please, this isn't me telling you what is. I'm just exploring these subjects. You guys are more than welcome to join along. Is there a desire in this world that's inherently within any being, whether you're talking about an animal or a human being? Are there any desires that we have that can't be fulfilled? Could there be hunger without the existence of food? Could you be thirsty if water didn't exist? So let's just go to the meat of the video and why I think it's important to stay on your path and not avoid your spiritual path. And by not staying on your spiritual path, of course this can change for everyone, and there's a whole question of, am I even walking on the right path? Is there a wrong path? How do I avoid it, etc.? And I want to keep this for another video because that opens up a whole bag of worms. And I'm not here to tell you whether or not you're on a right or wrong path. I just like to explore these questions and hopefully get you yourself to think about these things and be more informed. And when it comes to walking your spiritual path, generally speaking, it's living beyond the physical. But the caveat is not to deny the physical, right? I think it's like Jesus said, be in the world, but not of it. In other words, it's like you have to respect the physical reality, your society, law and order, your governments, all these people. These are very legit part of reality that we can't escape. And so it's something that you have to honor and respect in a way, but at the same time, you don't want to put all your value and importance on this thing. You have to live for something greater, a greater ideal. For some people, it can be God. Others, it could be, the universal source. I just find it funny how we kind of change these words over time when it's like, just say God. I don't know why people I do know why people have a problem with that word, but I don't know. I just don't think that changing words constantly is going to help, because eventually we could change the word God to, whatever, universal source. And then 10 years from now, people are going to have a problem with that word. And then we're going to have to change it again. And then people are going to have a problem with that word. And we're going to have to change it again. And that's just chaos, right? Just say what you mean and mean what you say. And so it's very important to stay true to yourself. You got to keep your practices going, whether it's prayer, meditation, or just taking time to be present and grateful and all this. This is all spiritual stuff. Like you sitting and thinking about how grateful you are to be where you are, to live in this spectacular universe, to remind yourself that there's something greater and that everything's going to be okay. And it's like you kind of have to practice your faith in a sense. I go through my own struggles, and lately I've firsthand experienced the dangers of not following your spiritual path, and sometimes you can get too comfortable. Like I was saying, with the whole staying on your spiritual path, and that is basically listening to that inner conscience of yours, right? It's like Jiminy Cricket in Pinocchio. You got to listen to that voice. God has put a conscience in every human being's heart, and you can't confuse conscience with desire or impulse, because sometimes our conscience will tell us deep in our soul that we need to override our impulse and what we need to do. Like, for example, I hope that this is going to relate to this whole topic and we'll go full circle at the end. And if I'm just going on a tangent, I apologize. But let's say you're walking down a dark alleyway, right? And you hear a woman screaming. And then you go towards that sound and see that there are 3 muggers doing not very nice things. And if you look at the scientific, or at least the evolutionary paradigm, and that is that humans have 2 basic impulses, and it's pain and pleasure. We want to avoid pain and go towards pleasure. But when you're in this situation and you're in a scary dark alleyway, and you're not like a strong guy, it's not like you're Jackie Chan or anything, or you have like incredible fighting skills, you're just a normal average Joe. And you get 2 feelings, don't you? Either one, it's to run away. 2 is to help. Some people do have that impulse, like their impulse is to help. But sometimes you have that impulse to run away, right? But then you get a voice saying, you gotta help this girl, man. You won't be able to live with yourself. So even though your physiology, everything in your body is telling you, dude, do not go towards that sound. There's 3 guys, you're 1 guy, you're gonna get killed. Like, is this woman worth dying for? You start using rationales. But then your conscience is like, yeah, but is this the right thing to do? Are you gonna be able to live with yourself? And so the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'm always going to remind you on this channel and myself that we need to transcend duality. We need to go beyond dialectics of ones and zeros and this or that and either or. But when we think of in this dualistic paradigm of everything that humans do is to chase pleasure and or avoid pain, then we ignore the third thing, which is your conscience, which is the free will, which is choice, which is that part of you that transcends these dualities. This all relates to spirituality and living a physical life as a human being, because you need to balance it all out. Like for example, without a human brain, we wouldn't even have a mind to inhabit this body, you know? There's a reason why you can't transfer your consciousness into an animal or a plant. I'm sure you can go on like some crazy psychedelic mystical trip and all that kind of stuff and think that you are, but not in a consistent scientific manner which you can test. No one can go inside my mind and tell me who I am as a person. Like, not directly anyway. And so it's a similar thing when you're walking your spiritual path and some challenges happen. Maybe your peer group kind of tries to bring you down and they don't want you to be who you are. And I've gotten this resistant all the time, man. Oh, so many like old like addictions that kind of keep coming back. And then I realized, hang on a sec, all the people I hang out with have this exact addiction problem. What am I doing? Why does this have to come back? And I noticed that in my life, when I don't practice my spirituality, and by this I'm just simple stuff, like I know that this can be very esoteric for some people, but when I'm talking about spiritual practices or walking your spiritual path, it's just really being honest with yourself, being who you are. And sometimes that's difficult to do. Sometimes it's saying the hard truth, and sometimes it's taking care of your body, because this is all part of the spiritual, really. And so you need to eat healthy, you need to exercise your mind, exercise your body, pray, be grateful, remind yourself that there's something greater than you, but also be grateful for being in this world and being good to your community. And I know I'm saying all this and like I sound like a hypocrite, and like, you know, we're all hypocrites to a certain degree, but it's hard. Like it's very easy for me to be a loner, and sometimes we can use spirituality as a crutch, like spiritual materialism, where we kind of distract ourselves by only meditating and then we ignore everything else. Or we don't hang out with people who are on a lower vibration, man. And that shit is very dangerous, because then you're putting yourself in a box of these self-reinforced ideas, and you're just making your echo chamber smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And while you think you're super spiritual and wise, you're actually missing the point of the whole thing. And, you know, there's a lot to learn. There's so many perspectives out there. And when you just stay in one paradigm forever, you have a smaller picture. You've only got like 1 or 2 jigsaw pieces instead of like 5 or 10. And then you join a community, and then they have a few jigsaw puzzles, and then other people, and then you create this huge community, and everyone's got a piece of the puzzle, and then you're like, hey, let's work on this together. And while we might not ever have the full jigsaw puzzle of the mysteries of life, at least we can get closer to it, you know, have one little slither of truth at a time. And so authenticity isn't just about being yourself, but about being with people who reflect your core values and building a community. Otherwise, things can fall apart really quickly, and the mind can be very deceiving and trick you into thinking that everything is okay, right? And that's the danger about judging where you are in life by the amount of pleasure or pain that you're experiencing. And that this is what I'm talking about, this dualistic paradigm. And I fall into this trap too. I recently did. I am in one right now, in a sense. And that is when life is going so well where you stop trying, in a sense. You know what I mean? And when I say life is going well, there's many other aspects. Like, you could look at me from the outside and be like, dude, you're fucking suffering, bro. But then in my mind, I'm like, yeah, but I'm happy. You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of things, like, we all struggle with different aspects in life, but I noticed that when I stop the spiritual stuff, the praying, the meditating, taking at least a day a week to be by myself out in nature, things start to fall apart. I guess my weakness increases in that my willpower decreases, is what I meant to say. So my ability to say no to bad impulses, like, you know, the smoking weed or eating a bag of potato chips or watching 3 more episodes of this show or playing one more turn in Civilization or whatever. I notice that my willpower goes down, and over time, especially when I pray and meditate and do all this spiritual stuff and, you know, read about these things, whenever I do that less, over time, my bad habits start to increase, and then my gratitude starts to get lower. And so it's like this balancing act, I suppose. I don't know. I think we all know deep down what you need to do. I know what I need to do. We just delay, or we try to negotiate in our own mind, like, oh, but maybe this is not what I want. Maybe what I'm doing right now is the right thing. And then you can trick yourself for a while, but, you know, those ugly patterns start to come back until you can't ignore it. But sometimes it's about shedding off old skin. And that's tough, because maybe you've gone your whole life thinking that this dead skin is actually a part of you, but it's not. And because if you left it on for so long, it's like now it's like sticking onto your actual skin, and it's painful to rip it off. But sometimes things aren't a part of us. And these can be things like addictions. Myself has struggled with a lot of addictions and being a pleasure fiend and sugar and weed and all this kind of stuff. And I go through these cycles of justifying it to myself and thinking that it's okay. But then when I zoom out of my life and I'm honest with myself, and this is why journaling is important, because especially when you're honest, you can go back on your journals and see the patterns and seeing what you used to believe and seeing if that actually panned out, if it aligns with reality or not. And that requires, checking your pride, I guess. And trying to cultivate humility. And humility, the meaning of humility is just knowing your place in the world. It doesn't mean, like, I can go way too far in taking humility and just end up putting myself down. I've been going through these kind of patterns myself lately. I've just been overly hard on myself. And sometimes, so now I've gone too far into, well, I guess if pride is on one end of the spectrum and true humility is in the center, I've gone like too far into just self-deprecation. Too much into not believing in myself and what I can achieve and what I can do. And so sometimes you need to build yourself up. And you're never going to reach this perfect balance point in your life. But you can get closer. You can at least stay away from the extreme ends. And then you're oscillating in the center. And then over time, you kind of get a little bit more still. And again, it's never going to be a perfect fucking... Oh, before I forget, I do want to announce to our lovely patrons, which I've sent a message, that we will be doing exclusive live stream, right? Because I think it would be good for us to hang out with each other. And the reason I'm not doing it publicly on YouTube is just because it gets too much sometimes. I'd rather just keep it a small group. I might still upload it on YouTube, but I want to do like just a small live stream, you know, like-minded people. And that way everyone can have their chance to speak their piece, I suppose. And I don't know, I think it's going to be fun. We'll hang out. Who knows, maybe Yesenia can pop in for a surprise guest spot. But anyways, if you're interested in that, or if you just want to support our stuff, then please check out our Patreon. I think it's like one of the reasons why I've been like putting myself down. And this is what I'm talking about, this whole spiritual journey, why it's so important to stay true to yourself and to keep discipline in those spiritual practices, because if you don't, everything falls apart. And I'm not just talking about, like, I'm really mean everything, like your health, your mental health, your diet, your self-esteem, your finances, man. Like my finances, holy crap. Especially with this whole COVID thing and like Patreon going down every month, and I'm just like freaking out. But instead of actually taking action and what can I do about this and who can I talk to and build myself up, and I try to do that, of course. Like I'm not just a complete nihilist, pessimist, but sometimes that overwhelming doubt and all that, you know, negativity can overpower you. And then you start thinking like, maybe I deserve to be broke. I actually said these things to myself. I deserve to be broke. I haven't been putting into this channel as much as I should. So of course, things are going to go down. But then you got to remind yourself that these are just mind-fuckery games, you know. And really, it's about putting your attention into that ideal that you want. That's why, again, spirituality or the immaterial or the ideal, because when you think about potential and ideal and who you want to be, none of it is actually real in terms of concrete reality. It's an immaterial imagination that you have to manifest, and by doing that you have to constantly put your attention into it and then slowly bring it down to reality until voila, hey, my vision board came to life, fuck yeah. And then you're like, yeah, all the suffering was worth it, and you go through this cycle and like, yippee, and then up to the next challenge. Whoa, hang on, look at this. What the heck is that? Like a wasp. Crazy. Anyways, guys, I hope you have a good day. Wishing you all the best, and I'll catch you guys very soon. I've committed to myself that I will be making a lot more videos. I think I just needed a break, or maybe that was just bullshit. I didn't actually need a break, and that's what I'm kind of starting to realize. But anyways, I'll catch you guys soon. Much love, all the best. Sayonara.